In this week's resources, we're going to see how to edit images non-destructively. This is very important going forward, and this is how I want us to edit images from now on. First, there's two ways we can open a file in Photoshop, and the difference between these two is rather important. For this image, I use File and Open, or you can right-click on the image in your file system and say Edit with Photoshop. Either way, the image opens at 100%, and it's also marked as a background layer, and it's locked. And this is how you know you've opened it this way. In order to turn the background layer into a regular layer, what we're going to do is just double-click it and give it a name. In this case, I'm just going to call it something relevant like sandwich, and I'm going to put the word original on the end as well because that's my original image I'm going to work with. The other way to bring in a picture into Photoshop is to drag it from your file system or folder onto the Photoshop window. When the file appears, it does show up at 100%, which is great, and we can resize it before committing the size to the canvas by hitting enter. Once that file is committed to that size, however, notice that the Smart Object icon shows up. So when you drag a file over, it automatically becomes a Smart Object. Looking over at my Layers panel, I don't see any icons on my layer preview here, which means I'm working with a rasterized layer. So right now we're in destructive mode. What we're going to do is in destructive mode, what you might think you want to do is start erasing things and getting rid of them. You might think maybe you want to change the color a little bit, okay, or maybe you want to go up and add an adjustment on, like increasing the brightness and contrast. The problem with using these methods is that we've just edited the image itself. We've just changed the pixels. So if I save right now and close Photoshop, this is what's going to happen when I open the image next time. It's going to look like this. So if my client comes back and says, hey, I don't like that big eraser mark in this sandwich, I can't really rebuild that. Okay, so this is why it's considered destructive editing. If I undo these changes and just get back to my original layer called Sandwich Original, instead of destructive editing, what we're going to do first is we're going to right-click this layer and turn it into a Smart Object. To turn it back into a rasterized layer, we can right-click it and say Rasterize Layer as well. One of the benefits of a Smart Object is it retains the image quality of an image. For instance, if I take this non-smart image, this rasterized image, and I shrink it down, and then I make it larger again, you'll see how pixelated it gets. This is because Photoshop just actually took the image and shrunk the data down and removed some of the data to make it smaller. So when it made the image larger again, it had to invent some of the data, and it doesn't know how to do that very well, so it made it all blurry. So if I go back to my original picture and I convert this back to a Smart Object, and then I transform it down really small and commit those changes, and then make it bigger again, you see that the resolution is perfectly fine. And this is because a Smart Object doesn't show the actual file. It stores the file in Photoshop and all the data, but it only shows you a representation of the file, and it won't actually rasterize it until we manually do that, or it exports it as a JPEG or something else. Well, now that I have a Smart Object, if I try to erase now, you'll see I get an error that wants me to convert it to a rasterized picture again. I do not want to do this. Do not rasterize it again. If you do, it just takes the Smart Object icon off and makes it a raster image. So we have to put it back into a Smart Object. From here, we can do things like duplicate this layer, call this Sandwich Only. Using my Object Select tool, I'm going to see if I can select that sandwich. By holding down Shift, I'm going to add in the stick as well. And then I'm going to hit Q for quick mask mode. I'm going to come in here with my brush. I'm going to paint white. I always get those backwards to reveal some more of this image and just clean up my edges here. I can also zoom in. Over here I see kind of a mess, so I'll just paint like that spot in. There's a spot down here I might get rid of. Okay, so just make sure you clean up your edges before you commit any selections. I can exit quick mask mode by hitting Q again to get my selection back. Now what I can do is create a mask on this layer. Instead of erasing it, I'm going to create a mask. And you'll see on the layer, this other little icon shows up. And if I hide the background now, you'll see that this layer is only the sandwich. It's only our selected area. The neat thing about the mask is you can disable it and you can enable it again. The actual image was never destroyed. It was never changed. It's just part of it is now hidden thanks to our selection and mask. Another key feature of smart objects is the ability to add filters directly to them without damaging the pixels themselves. So on the background here, let's say I want the background to be a little bit more blurry. I can come up here and apply a smart filter. Why do I say smart filter? Because we have a smart object. So a smart filter is automatically going to happen. So if I go under blur, for instance, and Gaussian blur on the background, and I turn up the blur quite a bit here, let's exaggerate it and hit OK, you'll see that this layer, the pixels didn't change. It got like a little sub layer. Smart filters down here, and here's the filter. The cool thing is I can double click on the Gaussian blur again and just change it if I want. So I can edit these settings as I'd like. I can also double click options, and I can change the opacity of this effect and also the overlay mode or the blending mode. So that's what a smart filter is. And if I want an adjustment layer, for instance, let's say I want the background to have less color than the sandwich, I would come down here and I would add in an adjustment layer for, let's say, hue and saturation. Notice it creates a new layer, and I'm going to go up here in my controls in the properties panel and really down the saturation quite a bit so that the sandwich is now the most colorful thing. The cool thing about adjustment layers is you can put them up or down on the layer chain, and they affect every layer below them, so they affect multiple layers. Also, they have a mask. So if I come in here and select the mask, not the layer itself, I select the mask, and I take my brush and paint black, you see that I'm actually hiding the effect. The color is coming back. Okay, so you can mask an effect, you can mask a layer, you can even mask a smart filter. So you can take the blur effect and you can erase that, let's say, by painting black on the mask. You can get rid of the blur effect in the background. So say I can bring this table up front back in focus here by masking some of the blur effect. So there's a lot of things you can do just with these techniques, but notice that at no point in time did I edit the image itself. The image itself has never been destroyed or changed physically, and that's very important for this week. All of your work needs to demonstrate these layers, and when you're done, we're going to save them as a PSD. Of course, that's how I'd like you to submit your files, please. If you want to share them with other people, you can go to Save a Copy, and you can choose a format. In this case, a JPEG would be great, or a PNG works great as well. This would allow you to put this image on the internet or share it with a friend over email or post it on our discussion. Okay, and then you can save and just accept the default options. And that's our non-destructive methods and sort of workflow. First, we turned our picture into a smart object. Then we created a mask. We can also use smart filters that can be adjusted after they're made. And we can also use adjustment layers to affect many layers at once.